everybody. Welcome to CorePower Yoga Conversations. I'm so excited to be here today. First of all, it's National Yoga Month, and we're celebrating yoga, all its benefits, and the importance of yoga, and how we at CorePower power love from the inside out. And I'm really excited today to be here with three teachers who've been teaching at CorePower Yoga over 10 years. I think it's specifically between 12 and 18 years. So some really tenured teachers with CorePower, and listening to their points of view and knowledge and inspiration that I hope everybody can benefit from. Why don't we start with introductions from each of you, Bre, Kim, and Reace. Let's start with Bre.
I have been teaching for CorePower for 15 years, since 2009 is when I went through teacher training. I started practicing at CorePower in 2007 and was led here by a friend who actually taught for CorePower Yoga at the time. So it was really an exciting opportunity for me to be able to learn some new skills, but more importantly, I felt just very accepted by the community and also very accepted in just the way in which I wanted to move my body. And teacher training sort of happened just kind of on a whim. I knew that there was a training going on, and I really was excited to learn more about yoga. I didn't actually have any intention of teaching at first, and then I found out that I really liked it, and so it sort of turned into a thing. And I have been a full-time teacher. I have been now currently am a part-time teacher, and I teach every format with the exception of Strength X. And yeah, I think that covers the bases. I'll start with that.
Thanks, Bre.
Yeah.
Kim?
I was just going to say, Bre, that we're on almost the same path. So I started practicing in 2007, and then I also did my training in 2009 as well, but just in San Diego. So we were in the same bubble, same energy at the same time. But yeah, so then I got hired. Let's see, I did my training in 2009. I got hired in 2011. I've been teaching at CorePower since then. And I guess what brought me to my mat is that I have a really bad neck disability. You can't tell on video, but you can tell when you're around me in person. But it's been very hindering for me. I have chronic pain from it. It's just been a very, very, very long journey. And so I started with yoga because my acupuncturist just kept bugging me over and over again that the practice would be so good for my body. And so I ended up coming to CorePower, which is where he told me to go. I'd never heard of CorePower before then. And after my first class, I was obsessed. I can't even explain the obsession that took over when I did my first class. And then I ended up doing 8 classes in the first week during the free week. And then I joined as a cleaner. Actually, I was a cleaner for, I think, for several years, for a couple years until I did training in 2009. But yeah, it's been a very amazing, amazing journey.
Reace, tell us about your history.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Musical theater professional, and I was in The Wedding Singer, the musical, and it was choreographed by Mandy Moore from La La Land, and So You Think You Can Dance, and it was all these professionals, and I was young, and everyone would go to yoga, and I was like, yoga? That's so weird. And I went, and I became, like you, Kim, obsessed. I was like, this is so cool. So fun. CorePower was cool music and cool people. And that was in 2009. And then I did my training in 2010, became a teacher at Grants, and I've been teaching ever since. And I teach C2 is my fave, C2, C3, love HPF. After my 500 hour, I really became so infatuated with the spine. And so HPF really helps me slow down and encourage a lot of anatomical cueing. My C3s in Denver have been so fun as well to really encourage philosophy a little bit deeper. And I love sculpt as a teacher. I don't love it as a student. And kind of like Bre, like you name it, I've taught it except for CRX. Right? Is that, did I say it right? CRX? Yeah. I teach everywhere, but I always kind of keep my home at CorePower.
Let's stay with you, Reese.
Mhm.
How do you stay inspired? How do you keep yourself inspired all these years as a yoga teacher?
Taking other teachers' classes, number one. I just took a teacher here recently that got me into handstand, which I don't. At 17 years of practice, almost 15 years of teaching, like handstand is not something I like in live classes because it can be so, let's just say, rushed. And the teacher really inspired me. She was so direct with her strength cueing, and it's led into my week. I mean, I taught 4 classes yesterday. I just ran from class today to get here. And I was strong. I felt strong. I felt really excited. And so anytime I'm feeling a craving for more inspiration, I go take other teachers' classes just to hear their voice, hear their music, hear their style, and be a student. It's what we hear in the beginning of our teacher training. It's what we tell our new teachers, like, don't forget you're still a student. And yet it's the most simple reminder too. You're like, gosh, why do I feel off? And it's like, oh, I need to go take class. So that's probably number one. Reading, of course. I just reread The Power of Now, and that really helps influence a lot of my conversational topics. And then when I'm feeling a lack of inspiration, kind of around the fall, like when the busy summer is over, studentship is down, and then we're about to switch into our busy season, I restart the yamas and the niyamas. So I go on a 10-week journey with my students almost every fall. And I just started a himsa, and it really inspires me again about what I love about yoga. And so, yeah, theming and other teachers.
Fantastic. I love it. I feel your inspiration, even through the screen. I'm feeling it. Let's hear from you, Kim. How do you stay inspired as a yoga teacher all these years?
Gosh, well, I definitely, for sure, everything that you said, Reese, is exactly. I was like, oh yeah, he's like talking for me. So 100% taking other teachers' classes. I also feel that, it inspires me to be more creative or to think of a different transition or way to do something. And then it's kind of fun too, because my classes end up being like 20 of my favorite teachers all together, like some things from this one, some things from that one. So I pull like little bits from each of classes I take and kind of mesh them into my class. And I would say separate from practicing is definitely meditation. I've really, this year has been like the year of transformation for me in terms of my meditation practice, but then also in terms of seeing how my life has unfolded differently from becoming, from having more of a solid internal foundation through meditation. And I would say I definitely get a lot of inspiration from just not necessarily when I'm meditating, like sitting there, but throughout the day, I've noticed that the way my mind clicks and thinks is just a lot more open and clear and abundant. And so I feel like different things have started to shift into place that inspire me with teaching. But it's crazy though, after all this long, I just don't get burnt out. I mean, it's just, there's like a love behind it from getting to connect with other teachers, with the community, with students. That's part of it too, is like the more that I show up as a teacher, which also, like you said, Reese, a student, right? We're always a student too. The more that I show up, the more that I'm reminded how magical this practice is, and how it's healed me through different grief and heartache and sadness and injury, things like that. And then just like getting to see how it's impacted my students and other teachers in the community, and how their mindset, their body has been transformed as well, or even just the way that we see things. And that to me is really, really inspiring.
Love it. Thank you, Kim.
It's a special
Great.
community we have.
Yeah.
For sure.
Thanks, Kim. I really resonate with two components of what you said. The first one was the healing aspect of things. I think for me, I work in healthcare outside of being a yoga teacher. I'm a physical therapist assistant, and I work in a pain clinic. And that's a new career that was inspired by being a teacher, actually, and by my love for movement and my love for being in the body, and also the complexity and strangeness sometimes of having a body. And what maybe inspires me the most is that knowing that so much of my own relationship with my body and like the positivity that has come from that is because of my positive relationship with the physical practice of yoga. But the other component that you had mentioned that I resonate with too is the meditation component. Because in no uncertain terms, not everybody will have a sitting practice, for instance, or a silent practice or a breathing practice, but it's just so accessible for all people to be able to feel grounded in one space. I think and for me, that's been, as a student, really important for my own just like life upbringing and an aging. But the other thing is that it is really an ageless practice. Having been teaching for so long and then practicing for longer than that, recognizing that it really helps with being able to cope with the change of body and life and environment. And so what inspires me is knowing that on a very personal level, everyone else I encounter is going through that. We're all, fighting our own battles, and we're all going through our everyday and seeing through our own lens. And to be a guest and an opportunity to provide education and acceptance really is what keeps me coming back. And like you, I don't really feel. I will say this, I felt some burnout when I was teaching like 16 classes a week for sure, but I definitely don't feel burnout these days. I teach for fun. I teach 4 to 5 classes a week, and I really love it, every aspect of it. So, yeah.
I think 16 classes a week would lead probably most to burnout.
I did it for a long time.
Reace, you mentioned reading is one of the ways you stay inspired. Reace, Kim, Bre, any of you. For our listeners, what are you reading? What do you read? What have you read that inspired you? What can you mention that might be of value to others?
Gosh, right? So it's always text. I like to go back and read Meditations on the Mat, the Bhagavad Gita, go back and read the Ramayana. Like when you're feeling like you need a little bit of yogic oomph, going back into text. But rereading The Power of Now, which I've now read many times, it's just so nice because it's broken down into quick little segments and paragraphs and chapters. It's kind of why I like Meditations on the Mat as well. That's kind of where I go. I like easy reads so that I'm using those bullet points to teach.
Well, definitely a book that changed my life is called Infinite Possibilities. It's by Mike Dooley. And I cannot express enough how powerful that book is. I've read also Power of Now too, Reace, but the tinier book that's easier to digest, not the huge, I can't remember what it's called, but the smaller Power of Now book, which is also incredible. But definitely I remember specifically reading Infinite Possibilities and how it just majorly, astoundingly transformed my mindset and how I see things and think about things. And so that's been for sure a path that I've been on as far as still in that space of those types of teachings of, your mind over matter, thinking positively, manifestation, things like that.
Thank you for sharing that, because I'm putting a mental note in my head. Infinite Possibilities. I'm rereading The Four Desires by Rod Stryker, who's kind of a great yoga teacher, really a wonderful book. I read it about 10 years ago, and then recently I picked it back up again. And it's a really great piece of literature that's really more just applicable to finding your calling or reaffirming that your calling is your calling, and figuring out there's sort of structural tools or ways in which he offers the ability to sort of distill down, really following your intuition and trying to kind of, recognize that sometimes the path is not not what we expect it to be. But in order to feel like you're living a fulfilling life, right? Sometimes you're going a direction that maybe you didn't think that you were going to go. That's kind of a very short Cliff's Notes explanation of that book, but it's quite broad. And then I'm reading, as in now, just for the first time, a book by Ram Dass called Paths to God, and it's a breakdown of the Bhagavad Gita. He's kind of a prominent educator, or was a prominent educator, a little controversial in some of the ways in which he explored some of the realms of education that he provides, in his literature. But this book is lovely because it's just a really, really broken down way of looking at this text and being able to recognize how it feels applicable to the human condition, which I think is so. I just started it. I may be 20% in, and so I'm just getting into it. So those are two pieces that I have revisiting and now also visiting.
Oh my gosh. Bre, thank you for bringing me back. Rod Stryker, I think he was my first yoga teacher.
Oh, there
it was
you go.
a video, like way, way, way back then. So that's funny.
Mm-hmm.
And Ram Dass, I particularly love a book that was really meaningful and powerful for me was Walking Each Other Home in
Great
his
book. Yeah.
years. Yeah. I'll say a couple books for me that I have found incredibly inspiring. One that is pretty pragmatic. The first one is the opposite of the second one, and that's The Art of the Good Life by Rolf DeBelly. I read it a couple times. The second time I read it, I was going through a difficult time in life, grief, and trying to figure out the what's and the why this happened to me, and all the spiraling that can happen as you try to accept life lifing on you. And I loved that book because it just spoke very frankly about like everybody experience, is very sort of Buddhist and philosophical that way. There's suffering and it affects all of us. You're not special and you're suffering. And that was very grounding and kind of a reality check for me as I was going through my own process. And then I go back to the Patanjali Sutras all the time when I need inspiration. It's definitely in a more philosophical realm, but there's so many applications to the day-to-days of life that when I'm, feeling the need to find inspiration for something, I always find it there. So taking all that inspiration in those different ways, you all seek it, find it when you need to. How do you take that and then power love in your yoga class? How do you bring love through yourself to your students? I think of yoga teachers as vessels of love that you kind of bring it in through yourself and back out.
Oh, I love that. We're vessels of love. I love that. I can say that powering love, I also love that, just that line, powering love through teaching. For me, it's definitely connected to, I feel like all of my own life experiences and backstories, being able to relate to like the other brown person in the room, being able to relate to people who have injuries or disabilities of some sort. And so I feel like when we are able to, I guess, be more like accepting, like you just said, Niki, but that acceptance of, where we are in life and who we are in life and what we've been through, then I feel like then we're able to also find that same acceptance for other people and for our students. And so that's, for me, has been really powerful as far as like, empowering love into practices through that relatedness of being human. Like I feel like we all find ways to wrong ourselves when we're actually doing the human part right. We're just not wanting to accept that the human way is the way that it is. Like, we don't want the suffering, we don't want the grief, we don't want the heartache, we don't want things to be too hard or tragic. And then like when it is, which is also part of life and living, then it's harder for us to move through those spaces. So I think when we do have that interwovenness together, then that's what definitely is like a common thread.
Yeah.
Your perspective, it just goes to show that we all see through our own lens, and we don't actually even really get to choose what that lens looks like, because it started forming and molding well before we were able to have any say. Part of what helps me to feel like I'm providing a space, especially when I think of that phrase, power love, I think of a space that feels welcoming and accepting. It's not about me either. When I go into the room, it's not about me. The teaching is not about me. It's not about how I'm even feeling that day or what I want the class to look or feel like. Of course, there's a part of it that's very fulfilling. I mean, I identify part of being a human is that we have many forms of ways of identifying, which can lead to suffering, according to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, actually. But it's nonetheless, here we are. We have, ways in which we see ourselves and labels that we give to ourselves. And I just have to remind myself that, being a teacher is not a way of looking or acting or, you show up and you've got all your own baggage. And then you go into that space and it's an open space where you're like, I have no idea what anyone else's day has been like. Some of you, I don't know what you do for a living. Some of you, I just met you for the first time. And yet here we are. You decided to show up. You had the motivation and the means and the opportunity and the transportation. And now here you are. And so to be able to just recognize that in the end, it's the desire is to feel a little more selfless. Of course, you want to provide a good space. Of course, when it comes to the physical practice, you want to provide what the students are coming for. But in the end, I'd much prefer a student do what they need to do and feel like they can do that in the room, or whether that be to have some emotional changes that come out physically, to do a little extra if that's what they need, or to do a lot less extra if that's what they need. I think that's the most fulfilling part of being able to kind of show up for others, and really to teach is an act of service. And if we can keep coming back to that, I think it just takes the pressure off of all of us to be so performative, especially as instructors, but then also as students and as humans, right? Because in the end, it's like we're all just trying to do our best, I'm fairly certain. And so recognizing that in others means that I can further recognize that in myself. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing like what you shared, Kim, because that was hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Same, Bre.
Yeah, beautiful shares. And love for me is bhakti. That was very early on in my teaching and my studentship. As a singer, as a storyteller, I really loved the stories. I loved sound. And even, for example, as I was talking, my theming, starting with the yamas and the niyamas, ahimsa, like how do I power love through myself, through my students? It's most of the time it's through my theme, because ahimsa to me, like you were saying, Bre, it's like encouraging the student to just go easier on themselves. Ahimsa literally is, can I practice kindness to myself, kindness to others? Can I practice non-harming my thoughts when I'm wobbling in crescent lunge? And that's kind of what I conjugate my thematic approach to, is how to give the student the permission to be a student, to love their challenges, to love the grief, to love the sadness, like Kim was saying, like to be this real version of a human and love it, but not like it, love it, right? Like just have love for yourself when you're going through challenging times. And so my CorePower why is always to make people smile, to bring joy, to bring bliss to the class. That's just who I am as a teacher, as a person. And so singing, I sing Sanskrit. I sing in Shavasana. We chant mantra beforehand. So bhakti is like how I power my love. And then hands-on assists, of course, in a post-COVID world, being able to reintroduce it slowly with a lot of consent and making sure that it serves the student. But that's another loving, caring anahata chakra expression, to be able to use my words and use my body and use my voice to just shower as much love as I can as their yoga teacher, as their person holding space for that day. Brings me a lot of joy. Brings me a lot of joy to bring in the bhakti energy.
Empathy, in my opinion, is a skill. it takes
Practice.
focus and honing, and it's not easy and it's not linear. And the trajectory of, you could do the same thing every day in the same way, and it would be different each and every time. And perspective is huge, and we all come at it with a different perspective every day as well. So yeah, that's all really good food for thought.
One of our 5 core values at CorePower Yoga is laugh together.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, Reese, I just felt like I found myself giggling in your class. And I know you kind of identify a little bit with Hanuman.
Absolutely. Yep.
And in fact, I just remembered when I was in your class, it was Hanumanasana that you cued me in a way all these years. And I think I told you that after class,
Mm-hmm.
even when I was a high school cheerleader, I couldn't do the splits that well. But you cued me in Hanumanasana to get how to get deeper anatomically. And I had like a breakthrough. Thanks to you. But also, I think because I was relaxed and not pushing myself as hard because you were so playful, and creating, fun and
Mm-hmm.
bring like this lightness to the class, or at least that's been my experience. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah. I mean, Bhakti, again, is kind of just something that anchored me to being a teacher. And Hanuman, when he opens his Anahata chakra, he's got Sita and Ram. And it's this idea that he lives devotion for others. He is in service of others. Like, his huge leap is in order to heal someone else. He has so much empathy. Like, as Bree's bringing up, like, it's so important to just be present with your ability to open this part of your body. My normal phrase is, I feed people their dharma with cotton candy. I'm like, hey, look over here. And then, oh, by the way, there's this deep rooted intellect. But mainly it's through the guise of silliness and play and joy, because I'm so identified with Hanuman, like with this devotion to other people. And he's a trickster. He's just a playful energy. And so that's very, very me, very much a trickster and silly. And it just kind of makes you go, huh, maybe I don't have to take myself so seriously on the mat. I can enjoy my yoga practice. That's like a crazy thought to modern students, especially Ashtanga based, Bikram based, studentship that's really strong and beneficial for you. And yet sometimes it helps to be rerouted to like, oh, I can actually have fun on the mat a little bit.
I mean, for me, I do a lot of visualization. I just naturally, I'm a creative mind. I'm always like dreaming up things. It's almost like I'm always like watching my life in my head, if that makes any sense. Like I can see myself like a fairy some days, where I'm just like floating around lightly and I'm tapping people and I'm, blessing people with, and then sometimes I think I'm a musician. Like I'm going to make everyone feel like magic today in class. And so I think like for me, a lot of it is just like my imagination to imagine like the craziest things that can happen. Like those could happen to you, the crazy, awesome things. And just, so I feel like a lot of it is just like how we, like what we, everything. So life happens in our minds, right? Like life doesn't happen anywhere else except for right here. And so what we process and what we think is so impactful for how we act and how we receive information, how we react to information, how we don't react to information. And so for me, it's definitely like my imagination.
What advice would you give yourself as a new teacher if you could wind the clock back, or the newer teachers that are just coming out of teacher training and starting to teach? If you see things that could be helpful, like what advice would you give your younger self or our newer teachers?
I think my advice to my younger teacher self and to new teachers is take more class, take as many classes as possible, take workshops, take special classes, go take other styles, go inform yourself of just the whole world out there. I did that a lot in the beginning, but like you, Bre, I was literally teaching like 30 classes a week in the beginning, because it like shifted my career from professional theater to yoga, literally. Like I just shifted what I did. And so to make money or just to feel like a part of the community, I took on way too many classes. So that would be my other point of advice, is not to teach too much. Like realistically, I think a healthy amount is good, and definitely teach as much as you can, but to not overwhelm yourself with the excitement of taking every class, of subbing every class, of teaching. I opened so many new studios here in Denver. Like I was a part of a new staff, just because I was like, yeah, of course I want to teach a new class, and yeah, of course, and that became a little. It made me lose out on my practice. And so I think that's, my biggest piece of advice is like, take from as many workshops as you can, not necessarily just class, but workshops where they're teaching you about Uddiyana Bandha, or where you're learning about the chakras, or you're learning about how the ankle moves, just a lot of opportunity to take class, take workshops.
Something that I always say in my classes is that yoga teaches us to find our own path and to walk the light of our own path. And so, in the beginning, we show up for class and we're looking around to try to see if we're doing it right. But then the more we show up, the more we do it right in our own way, in our own bodies. And so I think that, like, if I look back on when I first started teaching, I would say the number one thing that I did that I would encourage people to trust themselves more on is that I compared myself to everybody. And I wanted to be like all my favorite teachers, all the teachers that I did my teacher training. It's like every time I would teach, I'm like, but I'm still not like, Beth. I'm still not like Amy, like whoever class I took, I still wanted to be like them so badly. And so I think that it's just like giving yourself that breather to sort of rest back into your own inner radiance, and know that you're going to find it. You're going to start to discover a part of you that you didn't know that you were, that will come alive. And so I think just to really, rest into your own individuality. And I think the more that we are able to like stay in our own path and our own lane, then the more that like all the magic of life starts to find us, because you're in alignment with your heart, like with your spirit. And so you're like on that path that's supposed to be yours individually.
Bre was saying this, like Niki, you're mentioning this as well. It's like, I'm a better performer. I'm a better singer. I'm a better lover. I'm a better communicator. I'm a better friend. I'm a better everything, because yoga really, as a teacher at least, changed how I speak. Like fillers, INGs, being present with what I'm saying. It makes me a stronger communicator, which helps everything. Being a leader, like you were saying, your teacher Sydney says here in town, right? Like, I just think yoga and the teacher training and everything in general, it's changed who I am as a person. And in the best way.
I had a student in a teacher training who came out, or at the end of the training, she came up and she was like in tears. And she's like, I just want you to know that doing this teacher training has healed my marriage. And she's like, I've shown up differently. I communicate differently. And she's like, this has just been so powerful for me that I just want to thank you for, for the teacher training, so we don't know these things are happening, right? Unless they come up and tell us. But she could have just left training and never shared that. But that, like, I just got, every time I think about that, my body just like lights up. But yeah, that just shows the power of teacher training and of teaching.
Well, this has been an incredible conversation. We're out of time, but I just want to thank you, Bre, Kim, and Reace, for sharing a bit of yourself with our community and your willingness to just be here with us and chat about what teaching has meant to you. And hopefully there's some inspiration in here for some of our other teachers who are out there still finding their way and finding their voice and finding that inner light that every one of us has, and owning it. So thank you so much. I'm so grateful for each of you. And Kim and Bre, I so want to come and take your class. I'm going to find my way.
Anytime.